when you're a long-term investor, the stock market isn't really as glamorous. Hi everyone, it's Charm again from Ready to Adult Philippines, a channel about personal finance, entrepreneurship, and adulting how-tos. We've already discussed how the stock market works, so if you haven't checked that video out already, then make sure to watch that first. And as promised, we're making more stock market videos. I know that a lot of you guys are interested in investing in the stock market, so this video is perfect for you guys as we try to understand the terminologies behind it. So it's definitely similar to learning a new language. There are even terms and lingos that we might hear. Before we start, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Okay, so before we dive into the terminologies and words that you might hear around the stock market, let's first understand what you need to be able to invest in the stock market. And the first one is a brokerage. I've already discussed this in my previous video, but if you're still confused what a brokerage is, basically it's like a middleman between you and the stock exchange. So for example, you're the buyer. There's gonna be a brokerage between you and the stock market, and there's gonna be another brokerage between the stock market and the seller. Okay, so for you to be able to buy a stock, it's you, a brokerage, the stock exchange, a brokerage, and a seller. So I hope that's clear. So again, there are over 100 brokerages in the Philippines, but only 30 plus are online. So after the brokerage, the second thing that you will need is knowledge, and this is what we're going to be focusing on today. We're going to be understanding the basics of the stock market. And the third thing that you need is money. And if you're someone who doesn't have this yet to invest in the stock market, because it has to be money that you are ready to lose, then invest in your knowledge first so that you will know what to do when you do have the money. So I have some side hustle video recommendations, but you can also invest in your knowledge in the stock market by watching videos like this, or reading articles, reading books, attending courses, or free online talks. So learning about the stock market is a great way to start because you shouldn't go in blindly as well. Okay, so let's talk about the knowledge part. I know that there are a lot of terminologies that we hear around the stock market that are very foreign to us. So I'm going to be referencing mostly in the context of the Philippine Stock Exchange. So first, let's talk about the difference between the PSE, the PSE, and the PSEi. I know that sounds confusing. It doesn't seem like there's any difference to them at all. So one PSE is the Philippine Stock Exchange, and that's the exchange. Another PSE is the Philippine Stock Exchange Incorporated, and this is the stock code for the company itself. So the company running the Philippine Stock Exchange is also a publicly listed company. And the third is the PSEi, which is the Philippine Stock Exchange Index. So let's talk about the index, the sectors, and the companies. Okay, so first are the index. Okay, so the main index of the PSE is the PSEi, and this is composed of a fixed basket of 30 listed companies, and they're also known as blue chip companies. We'll be discussing more about that later, but basically this mimics the overall performance of the market. So the PSEi measures the changes of the market because if these 30 big companies are down, then majority of the times the rest of the other stocks are also down, and if these 30 companies are up, then majority of the times the rest of the stocks are also up. So just looking at the PSEi and how it's performing, you can already see how the overall market is doing. So in the US, for example, some famous indices are like the Dow Jones, which is composed of the top 30 companies, and the S&P 500, which is composed of 500 companies. So now let's talk about some sectors or some sector indices. So other than the PSEi, there's also an index that follows all shares of the Philippine Stock Exchange. So all 300 plus companies. There are also 6 sector-based indices, and these will tell you how the sectors are doing. So one is financials. This consists of companies that are involved in banking and finance and investments. Another one is industrial, and these are companies like electrical, energy, power, water, producing food and beverage, and construction, infrastructure, chemicals, and many more. Another one are holding firms, and these companies don't really have their own products or services, but their main purpose is to hold shares or own shares in different companies. Okay, next are services. These can be media, telco, IT, transportation, hotel and leisure, education, and etc. Next are mining and oil, and as the name suggests, these are companies that are engaged in mineral extraction or oil exploration, extraction, or production. And then lastly is the property index, and those are companies that are involved in land and property development. Okay, so why is it important to understand what sectors are and what they do to the stock market? So you can't buy an index directly from the stock exchange as how you would with stocks, right? The important thing to note about these sectors is that a lot of funds invest in certain sectors. So there are funds that mimic the PSEi, there are funds that mimic the financial sector, the services sector, the property sector, and so on. So for example, you are investing in individual stocks. You have 10 stocks and 6 of them are invested in banks. And if you notice, the financial index goes up and down, and that usually causes your 6 individual bank stocks to go up and down similarly as well. So it's not all the time, because of course there are going to be stock specific news and reports. So that's why experts suggest for you to diversify, not just for individual stocks but also for sectors. Now let's move on to the companies. Okay, so we mentioned earlier about blue chip companies. So what are these? So again, the blue chip companies are 30 of the largest and most active common stocks listed in the Philippine Stock Exchange. So the selection of companies in the PSEi is based on a set of criteria like public float, liquidity, and market capitalization. Okay, next are income stocks, and also sometimes called dividend stocks, are basically companies with a good dividend payout because of consistent and steady profits over the years. Okay, so next are defensive stocks, and these are also dividend stocks, and they're basically stocks from companies that are constant. So they're engaged in food, oil, utilities. So these things, despite what happens to the economy, people will need these things, and they usually give regular dividends because of that. Okay, so next are growth stocks, and these are companies that are expected to grow at an above average rate relative to the market. And usually these don't really give out dividends because they reinvest all their earnings back to the company. Okay, so don't confuse this with the next one, which is speculative stocks, because speculative stocks is assumed, or you're speculating that this stock is going to perform well, usually in the far future, and sometimes there isn't really enough sales or earnings to prove that. So that's why usually this is considered as a volatile stock. And we also have cyclical stocks, and these are companies that go through cycles depending on how the economy is doing. Meaning that if the economy is doing well, they are also doing well because people have a lot of more free fund to spend on. So these are mostly consumer stocks like car manufacturing and airlines, and retailers like furniture or clothing, and hotels and restaurants. So these are companies that are not really a necessity when it comes to recessions, or when there are down times in the market and in the economy. So last few things I want to share to you guys in this video are trends. Okay, so trends are basically how the certain stock or how the certain market index is performing. So we hear the words bear market or bull market. Okay, so the bear market, or also referenced by the way it attacks. So a bear is standing up and it attacks going down. So that means the market is going down or it's on a downtrend. And then the bull market, as how a bull would attack, which is with its horn going up. So it's going up and the market is optimistic. So these are also what you call sentiments, bear sentiment or bull sentiments. But there are also sometimes that the trends is sideways, meaning that the price is just going, kind of steady and sideways for now. And usually it takes some news or the earning reports to come out for these stocks to either go up or down. So lastly, I want to discuss some vehicles in which you can invest in stocks. So first is buying stocks directly, so you're buying the underlying asset. And the next is buying stocks through funds. So these can be index funds, these can be money markets funds or stock funds. There's really a lot of different funds invested in the stock market and even in different sectors in the stock market. So you're not necessarily buying each of the company, but you're invested in a fund that is invested in these companies. And lastly is through leveraging or CFD or contract for difference. And I don't really recommend this, especially for beginners, because this is essentially utang. You're basically borrowing money to be able to buy and sell certain stocks. And if you lose the money, usually the loss is also quite big. So yeah, but I'm just informing you guys. And if you want to buy direct stocks, then make sure that you are buying the underlying asset. Okay, so yeah, that's it for the video for today. I hope that you understood a little bit more about the stock market, because it's honestly a challenging topic for me to explain and simplify. But when you're a long-term investor, the stock market isn't really as glamorous and it isn't really as scary as these photos and videos make it out to be. But it's really a good avenue for people to start investing in. And I'm not saying there's no risk at all. There's definitely a lot of risk. But at the same time, the more you learn about it, the more your risk lowers, if that makes sense. Okay, so yeah, I hope you learned something in this video. And again, if you like this video, then please hit like and subscribe to the channel. Ring the notification bell, because as I mentioned, we're going to be covering more stock market videos. So make sure that you get notified every time I upload another video. And yeah, I know that adulting's already hard, but personal finance doesn't have to be. And again, this has been Charm from Ready to Adult Philippines, and I will see you on my next video.